Hello everybody. Hello everybody. Welcome to Quest Connect, our monthly Facebook Live done by facilitators of the Quest program, where we explore together different aspects of the Quest teaching and have an opportunity to meditate together and to spend some time in the support of our Quest family. So welcome to everybody who's attended the Quest for Life program, and welcome to all of those who may never have attended a Quest program. And we welcome you and hope that this introduces you to the Quest teaching and what you may enjoy learning from and knowing about the Quest teachings. So we'll start off today with doing our coming to our senses, which is, as we like to say at Quest, starting everything by doing nothing. And so if you're able to just gently close your eyes or imagine softly focusing your eyes as we do our coming to our senses. So lowering the gaze and bringing your awareness to the soles of the feet. And feeling through the soles of the feet the connection with the earth itself, planet Earth. Mother Earth, we call her sometimes, and just seeing if it's available to you to feel that there is a connection through your feet to the energy of nature and the planet itself. And then raising our awareness to feel ourselves sitting on our chair or wherever you're sitting today, and feeling the weight of gravity pulling down your body onto the chair. And just recognizing that, acknowledging that gravity, we can't see it, we can't hear it, but we feel it every moment. And seeing that gravity, feeling that gravity connecting us to the chair. And then together we'll go exploring our senses, and so noticing if there's any sounds that you can hear within your room or outside of the room. I'm smiling because of the bird song I'm hearing. And are there any tastes for you from maybe you've eaten lunch, any aromas in your space? And the touch of clothing on the skin, or the touch of your own hands on your own hands, feeling yourself. Just that sense of touch. And so we want to bring our awareness today into touching into the heart center. Just feeling an awareness of your heart, whatever that means to you. Your heart center, and bringing our awareness up to the brain. And it can be very helpful to just focus on the left side of the brain, hemisphere of the brain, the right hemisphere, the left hemisphere, the right, once more, the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere, as we just balance out the brain fluid and the focus between the two hemispheres of the brain, and feel ourselves with our brain switched on, ready to listen and engage. And I'm grateful to be here together today at our Quest Connect broadcast. And whenever you are listening to this, before or after. So, having come to our senses and arrived here today, and as people are still arriving, I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Gubbi Gubbi people in Queensland, southeast Queensland, and it's a very hot day here today, so I'm very grateful to be inside in the air conditioning. So today's topic is in reference to the fact that this has been the week of acknowledging persons with disabilities, and today I think is the International Day, but it has been going on for a whole week to be recognising and focusing on the needs and the experiences of people with disabilities. And I myself am a carer for an adult with a disability. Neurodivergent is our new word for adults with brains that work divergently and differently. And so it's a topic familiar to me to be in the world of disabilities and thinking about what allows people with disabilities to have a life that they enjoy and value and are valued and enjoyed by others. And so when we were considering the topic for this month's Quest Connect, I thought, it's true for everyone, and particularly for people with disabilities, to switch that focus in a way and be really able to and ready to acknowledge our abilities. And that is true for everyone, because we grow up in a culture by and large that tends to focus quite a lot on what we're not able to do, or maybe on what we should do better or could do better. And I've been working with people as a group leader, facilitator, teacher, therapist for 40 odd years, and it's very rare to find someone with true confidence in their abilities. It's most common, often we find people with a lot of anxiety or focus on what they're not able to do or what they might have done wrong, but particularly on what they feel the abilities they're lacking. And I see how this limits people's lives so hugely, to be focused on what you can't do, what you think you can't do, what you don't feel willing to try, what you're not confident to have a go at. And that a lot of people live lives that are very constricted by that. And then we see people who have a disability often living, extraordinary lives, because people have focused with them more on what they're able to do rather than what they're not able to do. And so they often have a lot of confidence in what their abilities are rather than a focus on what their disabilities are. And so this is a great theme for us all really to consider and to look at: how do we live our best life? How do we not just survive but actually thrive in a life that has meaning to us? And many of you will have read Patria's book or be aware of it, of Your Life Matters, and if you've been to Quest, you've been gifted a copy of that to read through your program. And it is extraordinary, isn't it, how just that simple statement, your life matters, can seem to be quite radical in a way, quite something that we don't focus on. And people are parents or work in the helping professions, they can get very focused on everybody else's life matters, but their own life doesn't seem to matter as much. And in terms of when we see how we pay attention to, what we focus our time, money, energy, resources on, often people are focusing a lot on other people's lives and not their own. And so a great many people have grown up being caretakers, people who are focused on looking after others, or feel that it would be selfish to reflect on themselves or pay attention to themselves. And when we at Quest we talk about building resilience in very practical ways and helping people through difficult times, whether they're dealing with a life-threatening diagnosis or anxiety, depression, mental health issues, trauma, disasters, all the Ds as we call them. We see that if we focus on what we're not able to do, we focus on what is causing us worry and distress, which of course is very understandable. We're in acute situations. But often we can get into a space where we can't think of a new approach. We can't think of the next thing that might be useful. We can't think of a different way to do things, which is part of a resilient response to a difficult situation. We have to think outside our own square, as it were, and have access to our intuition and our creativity and our different abilities. And when we introduce these themes, people often say, oh, well, I'm not creative, or, I'm, very left brain, have to think everything through. I don't have access to those creative, resilient responses. So we teach at Quest, we have a session at Quest where we look at those, how we think about life and how we think about ourselves. And really the Quest program is all about shifting the conversation from our usual ways of thinking about ourselves and thinking about life. And what I find is that most people may never have actually thought about how they think about life. They've not actually thought about how they think about themselves and how they think about other people, and may not be aware even that how their attitudes to life and their attitudes to people will absolutely come from what they were taught as children, their family of origin, unless they have deliberately said, hey, I don't want to think that way, or I'm not very comfortable with that line of thinking, with those values or those ways of interacting. I'm going to choose new ones. I'm going to seek out people who do it differently. I'm going to learn skills to do it differently. If we haven't done that, then people are literally recreating their own and their ancestors' past by living with the values and thought systems that they've been taught growing up. And this includes how we think about what kind of person we are, how we think about what kind of people everyone else is, how we think about, life wasn't meant to be easy, or life isn't fair, or life is meant to be fair, and how come good things are meant to happen to good people, and why are bad things happening to me. All those kind of thought systems which can lead to and reinforce depression and anxiety when we feel like, God must be punishing me, or fate or the universe or whatever I call it must be punishing me now because things just keep happening to me that are difficult and upsetting and strenuous, and I'm so stressed and strained. And so at Quest we really want to challenge, how are we thinking about this? Where did these values and attitudes come from, and are they working for us? And the whole premise of Your Life Matters is that there may be some better, more useful ways to address things than what we've been doing, especially if we feel really stressed and unable to concentrate. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab a tissue. I'm getting a little bit of a hay fever. So, pardon me. One of the talks I like giving the most at Quest is when we talk about, people say, oh, well, that's just the way it is. That's just the way I am. I'm not very creative, or I'm not very quick on my feet, or I'm not very good at this, or I'm not very good at that. And that's just second nature to me, to put others before myself, or to put myself down, particularly to criticize myself. It's just second nature to me. And one of the things I do enjoy at Quest is to ask people in the room to put up their hands. Who does that? Who criticizes themselves, feels that they're not good enough, feels less than, feels like should, would be doing it better. And I love it because really we all, including the facilitators, put our hands up and we go, how is this such a prevalent idea? How is everybody feeling this way when I think everybody else is doing it so much better than me? And we find that these ways of thinking, could do better, should do better, not doing enough, not doing it good enough. If I was doing it good enough, things would be working out for me. If I was doing it well enough, bad things wouldn't be happening for me. If I was doing it well enough, my relationship wouldn't have ended, or I wouldn't have got sick, or whatever we're applying to that. There's often an idea of, I'm not doing something well enough or good enough, and that's what's getting me into trouble. And when we look at where have those ideas come from, they've come by and large from our parents and their parents and their parents. And we've been raised in different ways of thinking, and often we've been raised in the idea of, if I'm good, I'll be rewarded, and if I'm bad, I'll be punished. And then we grow up and go, life isn't happening that. I've been good. Why is horrible things happening to me? Or why aren't I able to do things better? Or why do I have a disability when I've been good? And we start to realize that's way too simplistic an idea, the Santa Claus philosophy of naughty and nice, and man with a grey beard's watching, and he'll give you presents or he won't give you presents, and whether that's some idea of God or Santa Claus, the philosophy is very similar. And when we come back to it and go, wait a minute, it's second nature for me to think about in terms of rewards and punishment, good and bad. Am I being good? Am I being bad? If I'm being bad, I deserve to be punished, but if I'm a good person, I don't deserve this. And we live in that cause and effect universe. And so we pose the question at Quest, if that is your second nature, that's how you've been taught to think about yourself. You're not doing it well enough, you're not good enough in some way, or else you'd be rewarded and you'd have everything you want. Or no, you can't possibly have everything you want because life is meant to be hard, and that only happens to other people, and then they're the rich people, and yada yada yada, get where I'm going with this, right? All those belief systems. And all of that second nature, we've never questioned it, because as long as we've known about our own thinking, we've been thinking those thoughts. But now with the brain research and the brain information we have, we understand that what scientists now call the default mode network of thinking was programmed into our brains by the people around us. So whether that was school, church, parents, but a lot of it went in before we even knew it was happening, because by the time we got to school, we already had the idea of what it took to be good, what it took to be bad. It was good to be popular, we should be making friends. If I'm not making friends, I'm not good enough. Those kind of ideas are already well entrenched in 3 and 4-year-old brain. So a lot of this information went in very, very early. We've always thought that way, and maybe we've never questioned it. And we have this colloquial saying, it's second nature to us, which poses the question then, what is our first nature? What was our nature like before this was imposed on our thinking? Before we learnt this, what did we come in with as little babies? And when we look at a little newborn baby or pussycat or puppy dog, or we look at the newborn, the primary quality about them that we see is their innocence and their openness. They're inquisitive, they're curious, they're open, and they're very willing and ready to attach, to bond, to love and be loved. In fact, their whole ambience is looking for the eyes that are loving, looking for the face that is smiling, looking for the being that's going, oh, look at you, gorgeous new arrival. How can I welcome you into my world? And we can think, wow, if I could remember that I was loved and welcomed into the world, and not all babies are, we understand that, but that I was ready in my first nature, I was ready to be welcomed into the world. I was ready to have someone's eyes light up and face light up when they saw me go, oh wow, look at the gorgeous baby. I was ready for that. And if you've been around that innocence, you know that little person was like, I'm here, I'm ready. And then what happens to our first nature? We learn, we experience, we grow from primarily the way our parents feel in themselves, about their life. Now, if you're a parent, I want to give a spoiler alert here saying, please don't start thinking about what you've done as a parent, because this only works well if you do it for yourself first, right? And think about, you were ready to love everybody. You were ready to be received. You were ready to be, what can I do in this great big world? And you started by, oh, look, I can get up and I can walk. I can get up and I can run. I can get up and I can reach things that are high. I can make gurgling noises that make people smile. I can pat things. I can touch things. Like, we were in this mode of exploring our abilities, and we had grown-ups around saying, don't touch that, it's hot, and don't touch this, or don't run too fast, you'll fall over, or all the things that grown-ups do need to say to 2-year-olds. And sometimes there was a focus more on what you were not able to do or not wanted to do, rather than what you were able to do. And we say, in the best of all possible worlds, if an infant was like, you're walking, how amazing, how clever, how wonderful, you're talking, how wonderful, you're singing, you're dancing, you're painting, you're exploring, you're trying things out. If in the best possible world, a baby and an infant is celebrated and encouraged all about their abilities, this is you showing up in life with all of your magical abilities. Because if you've spent time around children, you'll know they're pretty magical. They live in a magical world. In fact, they live in a theta magical brain state for the first 6-7 years of their life. So they're like open to everything, unicorns and fairies and Santa Claus, and life is very magical to them. And we all started out like that. So, and often there's this idea of, well, sooner or later you've got to wake up to the real world. Sooner or later you've got to come back to the real world. And when you ask people, so what's that world? Well, you can't really do this and you can't really do that. And it's often the world of limitations, the world of a limited existence, rather than to keep curious about, and what are my abilities? What else am I curious to explore, to try, to delve into, to be with in my life? Because that is my first nature. My first nature was, I'm curious, I'm exploring, and I definitely know what I'm here for in a body on planet Earth. And what is that knowing? And I'm touching my heart, because when we spend time deep within ourselves, and if we meditate or we spend quiet time, or we really explore our true nature by looking at the things that we do really spontaneously, like that cause us to take an in-breath, to be inspired. And it's usually a beautiful view, a newborn puppy dog, a pussycat, a rainbow, the stars at night, some beautiful music, a wonderful performance of some kind. We go, that's lit something up in me. That's had a physical reaction in me. That's caused me to breathe in and go, look at that, imagine that. Oh, if only I could do that. Oh, I'd love to see more of that, do more of that, be more of that. And I often suggest to people that a great philosophy to live by is to find out what lights you up, which is that light up. When we look at the cells in the body and we look at the brain, when people are doing something that lights them up, we see it literally light up. That is more energy, which is the same vibration as light in the body, and it shows up as light in the body. It goes, literally lights us up from the inside. And we go, I just, if you've ever felt excited about something new you've discovered, or that you could do, or that you couldn't wait to do, or that was really fun, that you hadn't imagined, or that you didn't know about, and you got excited about it, you go, oh, that lit me up. So what if the real meaning of life is to keep returning to a connection with our first nature, which is that loving heart that we all started out with as little ones. And if you've been around little children, they're so gorgeous. They want to help, they want to pat, they want to comfort, they want to love, and they want to be loved. And that desire doesn't really change throughout our lives. What does change is our belief in our ability to achieve it. Our belief in our ability that we're worthy of it. Our belief in our ability to see ourselves as that loving being, as that loved being. And so many adults are really convinced that everybody else is worthy of love except for themselves. And how do we know that? We know that I know that by talking to people, particularly people with anxiety and depression, whose inner dialogue, the conversation they're having inside themselves, with themselves, is one of negativity, not unworthiness. You won't be able to cope with this, you can't do this, this will be too much. You're not able to live your life the way you want to. You're not able to explore and try new things. You're not able to be uplifted. You're not able to be safe in this world. You're not able to be lovingly connected with others. And those beliefs in our abilities are collected from a lot of people, places and experiences, but primarily they are absorbed when we're very tiny little beings from how the people around us felt. And I'm a baby boomer. I was born 7 years after the war. It was definitely still what the grown-ups in my life were talking about. The experiences they'd all had were still traumatic, and we know that now. We know that the effects of trauma go way beyond 7-10 years. And the shock which the world is still in. We're still watching movies and reading books about how on earth did that all happen, that 50 million humans were killed by their own brothers and sisters, humanity. We're still shocked about that. And the legacy of that coming down in families, it's really worth all of you looking at where your family was during the last war, because it's only a generation or two ago. And it's still impacting. We now know that trauma in our DNA goes, and epigenetics falls down the generations. Intergenerational trauma is a real thing. And if we're born into a family of people who are traumatized and their nervous systems are irritable and they're easily cranky and they're scared of deprivation and they're scared of life itself because of what's happened to them, we take that on as we weren't lovable, we weren't enough to cheer them up, make it better, make things right for them. And you can fill in the blanks, but what is true is we can't really understand and love ourselves until we understand and love the story of our parents and how they felt about themselves, not how they treated us, how they felt about themselves and about their life. And again, parents, don't go to, oh, what have I done to my children? Because the best thing you can do for your children now is to think about this for yourself now. Because the only act you can clean up is your own. And when you do that, that will affect your children, whether you try to or not. So what if we'd been born into a world that was all about recognizing, fostering and encouraging our abilities, which doesn't have to be our super talents, that we were super talented at this or we were super amazingly able to do that. It could be really wonderful life things like our ability to make good decisions, our ability to have insight about ourselves and others, our ability to love animals, our ability to be calm in nature, our ability to enjoy colours, our ability to enjoy singing and dancing, whether anybody else thought we were good at it or not, our ability to have fun, our ability to create ways to enjoy life. What if often parents look at their kids playing and discard the awareness of, look at them creating a great way to have fun, and go, oh, don't be careful with that, you might break it, or be careful with that, it might be too hot, or don't fall off the... Like they're focused on how to keep us safe from danger and not focused on, oh, what's super important is I really encourage in this person the knowledge in their own abilities, their ability to live life with heart, with love, with joy, their ability to love. If we gave and received hugs from, I love receiving your hugs, you give the best hugs. You're so able to be loving. So you see what I'm saying is that we have these abilities. In my experience of working with many, many people and working with my own anxiety and depression and with a person with a disability as well, is it's really key to focus on these very everyday abilities rather than the super abilities. Super abilities are great if you've got them, but a lot of us don't have super abilities. And though I love it when we say, this is my superpower, it's a fun thing to say, you know. It's like, I would now say my tuning into the ability to love is now my superpower. But I didn't always feel that way. I felt like I was very unlovable, and you know, that my love wasn't going to be of use to anybody, and neither was I. That's how I felt for a lot of my younger years because of the traumas and experience that had happened in my parents' life, in my family. So being able to unlock the potential of our abilities is very much about coming from this loving attitude of being willing to be aware of our abilities to live life with grace and generosity and kindness and creativity and intuition and intelligence and humour. And often people are amazed when I put together a list like that, and they go, because often people will say, I've never thought about it that way. I've never thought like that. And if you think about it now, most of us as parents, and most of our parents, were focused on what could go wrong, how to keep our children safe, because we so love them and we're so terrified of losing them, right? It wasn't that we wanted to dampen their spirit or keep them locked from their potential. We were so scared of loss. And that leads us to shut things down. Be careful, be careful, be careful. Now, it's not about we want to say, take risks, take risks, take risk. It's just that we've not had the conversation about, oh, look how generous you are. Look how able to help that other person you are. I love watching you be a friend to your friends. You're so generous, you're so kind, you're so able to help. I love it when you come and help me as a parent. I feel so helped by you. Like, this kind of feedback is very unusual. People have a very, it's good, it's bad, it's safe, it's dangerous, it's, you know, it's risky, it's not risky. Then I find that people are not often thinking about, how do I talk about our ability to love? Because that is what we're most interested in. And that is really what lights us up the most and what we most want. So how do we unlock the potential of that? I love it when you care about how I feel, because love is one of the strongest loving behaviors, is caring about how another person feels. And we feel loved when we know that another person cares about how we feel. And that often unlocks our potential. We go, oh, there's someone who cares about how I feel. I have a dear friend, and sometimes we text each other at the end of the day going, just telling someone who cares, right? So important at the end of a day. There's someone who cares how that day felt to you, felt for you. And sometimes when we're in tough spots in our life, for various reasons, the only person who cares how we feel is us. And it's super important at that moment that we don't just make it a litany of what we did wrong, how things weren't right, how the world wasn't treating us right, how we weren't getting it right. The depressed brain and the traumatized brain will only give us that information. The depressed brain, the traumatized brain, the anxious brain will come up with, oh, but that bad thing could happen, or that bad thing almost did happen, you nearly did that, or let's watch some TV where more bad things are happening and where the world is getting stuffed up by people who don't care about how people feel, right? That's what the depressed, anxious brain will go towards. And it's super important to go, hang on a minute, I care about how I feel. I want to unlock my first nature, which just wants to love and be loved. I'm going to give my brain something to really work with for my heart to open. I'm going to watch movies about people loving each other. And there are lots of them, not rom-coms necessarily, but series where people are kind to each other and nurturing to each other and loving to each other. There are quite a few of those around. I'm going to read books about that. I'm going to watch YouTube videos about animals loving each other, about people loving animals. I'm not going to watch the ones about cruelty. I don't need more information about that. I do care, but what I need to care about is unlocking my potential to be more love in the world, not more fear in the world, not more anxiety in the world, not more shut down in the world, because I'm not good enough or I can't do it. I want to unlock my potential to recognize my first nature and transform my life, because then I'll be a person walking around the world smiling, loving, offering assistance, being a light in the world, because I'm lit up, because I'm singing with a group or dancing with a group or doing an art class, or I'm doing something for me. I'm doing something that I enjoy every day. 15 minutes of fun every day is the bare minimum according to the researchers. Another research I came across recently was about it is that relating, even if it's just the coffee shop conversation, the neighbour fence conversation, those how are you, even if it's at the level of isn't it hot today, isn't it this today, isn't it the other day, feed our brain in a surprisingly amazing way. And if we're in a space where I don't want to, I can't do it, then what can we do about that? So what's our number one tool for exploring and growing our awareness of our first nature, of course, is meditation. Because in meditation, we're really asking the brain to stop listening to the default mode network of how I'm not enough, how life isn't enough, how life sucks, how things are too horrible or too overwhelming or too often. And I'm not saying none of that is true or not true. You know, after 15 years of sitting in the room at Quest and listening to the things that happen in people's lives and being a therapist for many years, I'm not for a minute suggesting, I've never met a person with anxiety and depression who didn't have really good reasons to be that way, right? So it's not that I'm saying, oh, just cheer yourself up at all. But in the midst of these difficult things, and I've struggled with anxiety and depression myself seriously on many an occasion, how do we bring the love that we truly are and that we truly want into that environment? We have to be so careful at what we put into our brains, what we allow into our brains. We need things that make us laugh, make us feel kindly. And so, you know, I often joke the Gilmore Girls got me through, they did, a very few years of serious burnout and depression. People being kind, people being humorous, a young woman doing her best to love herself and her daughter through ups and downs, right? It's so important to feed ourselves on examples of there are people struggling who are still laughing, right? And I need to find what can make me laugh, what can light me up. And meditation is our way into that. So in meditation, we ask the brain to deliberately focus on being peaceful, being quiet, being grateful. This is our number one tool to bring the brain from the state of anxiety and depression to a state that is more open to love and the good love chemistry, gratitude. And even if it's that I don't live in a war zone today, I have enough water today, I have food on the table today, I'm not dying today. We can be at the very basic level of life But gratitude is the number one tool to turn around the ship of the negative thinking. And I love to add in, I'm grateful to myself today for listening to Quest Connect, for reading an uplifting book, for making myself a nice meal, for thinking of something that lights me up, for finding a way to express love and kindness to myself and to others, whatever that might be. It might just be a text. It might be a kind thought. I will think about one of my abilities today. I will be grateful for my ability to have a conversation today, drive my car today, walk today. If you've ever been not able to walk, that's huge gratitude. I can walk today. Is there somewhere I would like to walk today? Is there somewhere I could walk today that would light me up in some way? By a body of water, in some nature, in a fresh breeze. Could that be my love for myself today? Could I be grateful for the ability to do that today? And thinking of people who are not able to do that today. Not in an I should be grateful, but I can be grateful. I can unlock my abilities to be creative today. And that can be as simple as I normally walk to the right when I come out of my gate, and today I'm going to walk to the left. I normally get a coffee from this place and I'm going to try something I heard about on the other side of town. I normally wear my hair this way, I'm going to wear it that way. It can be so simple. Every act like that is an act of creativity. If we're struggling with something, rather than trying to figure it out in our brain, if you sit with it in meditation, I really invite you to do this experiment. To sit with it in meditation and go, okay, I can't think of anything new about this or new to do with this. Let me clear the brain, do a meditation. You might do one of Patria's, anyone's on all the different apps, or just sit quietly in nature, look at a flower. I guarantee you, you will find a new thought coming into your brain when you stop the I shoulds and I can't and if only and why don't we and all of that, and allow some space for your creativity to speak to you. And sometimes it's just like, oh, I could move that chair a different angle, or I could do that, move things around in my house, or I could eat a different brand of bread, or I could try another something. The smallest thing can unlock this creative potential to, am I living my life with my creativity on board today? Am I living my life with my intuition on board today? What does that mean? That means, I don't feel I do want to do that suggested treatment, activity, plan, whatever. And what else might I like to do? It's not about doing the right thing. That there's, if you haven't noticed by now, there's not just one right answer to every issue. I might even go so far as to say there's never just one right answer to any issue. What if I was able to bring my creativity to, is there, what else is there? What else is possible? What else is there? And let myself imagine different possibilities, different opportunities. I might just watch a different channel on TV. But all of these things can make a difference to unlocking recognizing the potential of our first nature. And we can have amazing first nature experiences in our meditations as the brain learns to quieten itself, as the brain learns to focus itself. We can find ourselves in some truly amazing places of joy. And we don't get there every time, it's not always, but there can be some great surprises when we stumble across our first nature in our focusing on what we want, which is, I want to be peaceful. I want to be able to love and be loving. I want to be able to transform how I feel in my life. I want to be less anxious, which means peaceful. Is there a way I can bring my awareness of meditation into my life when I'm anxious? And I have found personally that there are ways to do that, and there are practical tools. We've got our breathing, we've got many things that we can do for ourselves in the moment. And one of the key things is really paying attention to what I'm thinking. And we do talk about this quest that it's calculated by somebody that we have about 100,000 thoughts a day, and that 0.0001% of them is actually new. Well, that was a great motivator for me when I found that. I went, well, that's not good. I'm just not going to spend my life thinking thoughts that not only I've thought before, but my parents have thought before, and their parents have, like these old hackneys, I'm not good enough, nobody loves me, everybody hates me, think I'll go and eat worms kind of thoughts. They're not even mine, they're not original, they're not new. What else can I think about? I could think about my abilities. I could think about what I'm grateful for. I could pay attention to the clouds in the sky and how they're different every day. I could Google something I've been wondering about on YouTube and find out about it. I could learn a new hobby or do something creative just for myself. These are ways that we can experiment with. My first nature is love. I just want to be love. And I can remember a time when getting out of bed was such an effort, and another day was such an effort. And the thing that would get me out of bed was, okay, something I can do today is I could walk in nature and I could smile at people and bring the love that I don't feel I'm getting anywhere in life. I could just bring that in my own smiling at other people. And I think, yeah, that's an experiment worth doing. I can't find it in me to, my ability to feel loving and loved is stuck, but I can imagine myself smiling at other people, or smiling at their dog, or smiling at the view. I can imagine doing that, and that might make a difference in somebody's world. So, okay, I'll get out of bed and I'll do that today. And it was a starting place, right? It was a place to start what I wanted to do, which is I want to be the love, I want to bring the love, I want to share the love. That is my first nature. That is what matters to me. The Beatles, John Lennon sang the song, All You Need Is Love. And he wasn't talking about romantic love. He was talking about love is all you need. Anything you do, anywhere you go, all you need is love. So this ability, our innate abilities, for many people have yet to be discovered. They're lying dormant. And some of you have heard me talk about because the brain is like having a Porsche in your garage and never taking it out for a drive. Like, we have this amazing organ that is beyond a supercomputer, that contains more information than all the information stored in the cloud at once. That's how amazing our brains are. And most people are using it to think the same thoughts over and over again, to do the same behaviors over and over again, and are not thinking of anything new, are not thinking about, what else can my brain do? Maybe I'll do one of those things on YouTube or Google something about how to train my brain to do new things, because I can. if think I'm having senior moments and losing my memory, can I do something online to help my brain learn new things? What else can I do to activate this amazing brain? And can I think about, am I just thinking the same thoughts, the same tired old thoughts? And when I really looked at it, I found that I was. The depressed brain, the traumatized brain will come up with, there's another thing to be afraid of, there's another thing you should be scared of, there's another dreadful scenario that could happen. And it's very creative about it. You've got a trauma brain, you know what I'm talking about. It thinks of things you never would have thought about. And it latches onto things on the news and goes, there's one you wouldn't have thought about, but it was on the news, now you can worry about that too. Right? The trauma brain's tremendously creative. The depressed brain, not so much. The depressed brain doesn't create, it tends to just recycle things, other things that people have told you or you've experienced, and to go over and over them. And to say, look, there's no hope because that's all there is, because that's all I can go over and over, is thinking the same thing all the time. And it's such a shame because your brain is actually capable of learning. We used to think it wasn't capable of learning new things after the age of 25. We now know that people in their 90s can be learning new skills, their brains can change. They've done the experiments, they've done the MRI. People in the 90s can have therapy and have their brains rewired. Daniel Siegel writes about that in his work on changing the brain. We know the brain changes itself and can change up to the moment of death. So why waste it? Let's go, okay, what if I committed my brain to exploring my first nature? What would I do? Well, I'd meditate. I'd think about all the moments that make me go, and I'd go out at night and look at the stars. I'd drive myself to the beach or into nature and sit and listen and watch and look and experience my five senses. I'd call a friend or a family. I'd show up to somewhere where there's animals, or somewhere where I'd love to be connected with animals and people. I remember when I realized that my depressed brain, even though I didn't want to talk to people, I didn't have the energy, and I didn't want to say anything, that my brain did better around people even if I couldn't speak. And so I would just go to the library, and I always get excited about books even if I don't read them. Sometimes I just borrowed 10 books, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to read them, but something in them when I read the jacket lit me up, and I went, oh, I could read that. And so I loved going to the library and coming out with a big stack of books, and then I'd just sit somewhere with the books and be around the library where people are. And I didn't have to talk to anybody. I didn't have to do anything. But I could just be in a place where there were people looking at books. No one was being rude, no one was being loud, no one was being dangerous. People were interested in books. I could sit there. It was very soothing, very comforting, when everywhere in the world just seemed too dangerous and too stressful for me to go. And that was a creative solution. That's what I mean by creativity. And of course in the libraries, and they do have things about, you could learn a course on this, or there's a group creating this, and you go, oh, I could do those things. Now, you don't get up and do all of them, but suddenly there's a possibility. And often that picture of me in the library would come into my brain while I was meditating. Now, the depressed brain doesn't love to meditate. The depressed brain is like, sometimes I'd find that I need to read or listen to something soothing to get the trauma brain quiet enough to then be able to meditate and do quite an active meditation. Maybe one of Patria's or someone else's saying, and now look at this and think about this and imagine you can see that and do that, to kind of corral the brain into line. And then somewhere in there, it's possible a thought can pop up, oh, maybe I could go to the library, or maybe I could go down to the river, or maybe I could go for a walk. It allows that space for our first nature creativity to pop up and for us to show up in that way. So really the Quest programs are such an invitation to invite you to challenge what you know as your second nature, ways of thinking, your abilities, your disabilities, if that's the case, and really focus on your first nature experiences and do the experiment for yourself. If I was looking at my first nature, what would I do now? If I was seeking what lights me up, what might I do now? And maybe I would think about that holiday I wanted to go on and just Google something to do with that, or fill in the blanks for you. But prioritizing what lights you up over the what you should do, have to do, must do can be really helpful. Because our second nature will go, you have to do that first. Well, no, I think you can leave dishes in the sink in an untidy kitchen and go and do something that lights you up first. Because then when you come back to the kitchen, it doesn't seem so hard to do. You go, I can do that now. Because my mood's lifted. Because I followed my intuition to allow myself to explore something that would light me up. Make me feel that there was some love for me in my world. And then I might even be able to put some music on and even enjoy doing the dishes rather than I have to do the dishes. You know, some people find it radical that you are allowed to sit down if you've cooked dinner and watch an episode of something that you enjoy before you do the dishes. Not this, you have to do the dishes and clean up the kitchen before you're allowed to rest and sit down. Like, oh, radical, we can mix it up. We can do it our way. That's the joy of being a grown-up. And it seems I'm giving these very practical examples because sometimes people see it as, oh, you've got to be creative and paint a picture or do something magnificent. It's like, no, very, very simple things. I could just do this differently. I could just arrange the pillows on my bed differently. I could just do one small thing and then one small thing differently to assist myself with all of this first nature idea. So our intention with our teachings from Quest is always to be very practical and very down to earth. Because that, if you're walking your way out of all the serious conditions that we know the Quest family are dealing with on a daily basis, it has to be small. It has to be practical. It has to be something you can do, and it has to be something you will do. You will do the experiment. You will try for yourself. And because it's slowly by slowly, inch by inch, usually, that we make that lasting change. That we give ourselves that gift of, I want to live knowing my first nature. I want to live knowing that I can love and be loved. And that doesn't mean anybody else has to come and do that for me. It's my first nature I want to express. I want to be that love in the world. I want to show up as that love in the world and see how that changes my life. And we hear amazing stories from people about how that inquiry has changed their life. We've been told so many lies about what makes us lovable. You've got to be the fairest in the land and look perfect and be amazing and be sexy and be the right whatever, race, gender, size, shape, And yet we see and know of people with disabilities, with all sorts of things that are not that perfect picture, who are able to show up and be love and be loved. So remember that all those ideas of perfectionism are that default mode network thinking. It's not your thinking. You don't have to be perfect. You are perfectly yourself already. And Santa Claus is not going to come and judge whether you are worthy of the good things. You are that love, and it is the best thing. Whether it's a quiet, loving nature, loving you, loving peace in the midst of a storm of chaos. So I hope that you've enjoyed that exploration with me today and found it useful and inspiring, and that you are able to continue with your experiment to unlock your own innate creativity and abilities. Sometimes I worry that my backdrop is just messy, but it is actually one of my creative artworks. So be that as it may, I love having it there because I had a lot of fun doing it. So just an example, just a thought, because I've never done anything like that before, but it lit me up, the idea. So thank you so much, everybody, for being with me for this hour on a Sunday, and whenever you come to have a look at this session, and it's been a joy and a pleasure to talk about, you are your first nature. You are still that loving, amazing human being who has a body to live a lifetime on planet Earth, this tiny little planet in this not very big solar system, in this great big galaxy, in this huge universe, which doesn't make you insignificant, makes you highly significant. So have fun with this, I hope, and I look forward to seeing you again. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Thanks, everybody.